Good morning, everybody. Welcome to, I think it's March. What is today? Today is March 38th, and it's still winter out here. So thank you very much for joining us. On behalf of all of us at the Benefits Trust, we'd like to welcome you and thank you for taking an hour out of your time and spending it with us. Here with us from the Benefits Trust, we've got Lindsay Gibson in the house, Mike Ignatz, Jordan Bullhose, Rob Crowder, and Carrie Lane is here. And I think we have a special guest appearance by Brittany Shepard, but she's got her camera off right now. She's just observing. But we want to take this opportunity to say thanks for joining us today. You're going to be signed up for our Trusted Advisor newsletter, which you will get every single month. I think we're at month 143 or something along those lines, consecutive months, which is great. You're going to get a CE credit. Mike's going to send that out to you later on today. As well as that, we're going to give you a very short survey, and we'd appreciate if you fill it in because we get feedback from you on how we can do this better tomorrow than we did it today. And as well as that, there's an opportunity to give us feedback on what future subjects you'd like to see. So today we're doing a session on ASO Math Simplified, if you would. And that's, again, that we've received feedback from you. Hey, show us some mathematical examples of how you guys create your proposals and how you create your renewals and so on. So that's what we're going to share with you today. And this is based on feedback we've got from you. So please continue sending us that feedback. We greatly appreciate it. The idea of setting up these Zoomcasts in the past is we want to be in a room where everybody gets smarter as opposed to being in a room where somebody just stands up and chats, but it's a bit in a room where everybody gets smarter. If you've got comments, if you've got questions, if you've got any thoughts that you think could add value or you want to question what I'm saying, just put your hand emoji up so I can see it because it'll pop up on my screen, or type it in the chat box so everybody can see. And then, Mike or Rob or Jordan or Lindsay or Carrie will answer your questions throughout the presentation today. But put it so everybody can see, and that way we all get smarter, and that's the idea of this. Check us out on LinkedIn, the Benefits Trust on LinkedIn. We're also on Instagram, and believe it or not, it's 2005 or 2025, and we are on TikTok now. We've got a few videos up on TikTok, and we're going to be adding more shortly. So thank you again for joining us, and let's get started. Let me share my screen here so everybody can see. Again, our subject today is ASO Math Simplified. Oops, there we go. Hold on a second. There we go. We want to talk really quickly about what is ASO, the factor that leads the client to the best solution, assessing risk tolerance, plan design flexibility, case studies where we're really going to get into the math. And then, of course, we're going to have questions, answers, and discussions. We're going to wrap things up right at 11 o'clock sharp. But if you want to stick around for a few more minutes after that to sort of have some out of recording questions and discussions, we can certainly stick around for a little while after 11 o'clock. But if you need to leave, you will get your CE credit if you stick around till 11 o'clock. A little quick thing about the Benefits Trust. We started on January 1st, 1994. We're a full-service third-party benefit administration company. We're the largest independently owned TPA in Canada. In 2024, which is just last year, our friends from Benefit and Pension Monitor magazine named us a top employer in the benefits industry. So we practice what we preach, and we're also a top benefit provider. And that's based on what our clients gave as feedback to Benefit and Pension Monitor magazine. We provide custom employee benefit solution. We've got exceptional client experience, which we can talk an awful lot about. But as well as that, we've got a lot of long-term relationships with all the major insurance carriers and service suppliers. So we're not tied to any one particular insurance company by any stretch of the imagination. And our target market is working with advisors like you, with clients, generally speaking, from 1 to 100 employees. And the reason why we say that is because in Ontario alone, there's 440,000 businesses with 1 to 100 employees. So that's where our target market is. We certainly work with larger clients, and we've got quite a few of them. But again, our comments are based really on clients with 1 to 100 employees. So what is ASO? Let's jump right into it. ASO stands for Administration Services Only. In this business of insurance, and specifically group insurance, just like a lot of different businesses, I should say, but the insurance business seems to use a lot of TLAs, three-letter acronyms. So, keeping with that standard, ASO stands for Administration Services Only. It's often referred to as self-insurance, but we're talking specifically about health, dental, and sometimes short-term disability. We're not talking about life, AD&D, long-term disability, critical illness, stop loss, or out-of-country coverage, because those are fully pooled as part of the equation, but it's really just the health and dentals, and again, sometimes short-term disability. This is an old slide, but a good slide. And we're going to send these to the slide deck to you at the end of the presentation today. But this is one that I've used hundreds of times in client meetings when I'm out with an advisor, and I just put this in front of a client. And when you look at what the difference between traditional funding and ASO funding means, you've got the client promise, and let's just assume the client promise is the same. You've got the employee benefit plan, and that's something more than a promise between an employer and an employee. So you've got that client promise. Included in that client promise are risk charges for insurance. And again, the life insurance, the AD&D, the LTD, the critical illness, the out-of-country coverage, the stop loss, etc. Those are risk charges for insurance. Then on the traditional funding side, the insurance company anticipates what the client's future claims are going to be. They're anticipating what those claims are going to be. And if you're anticipating something and you're an insurance company, you're going to be very conservative, generally speaking, in how you anticipate what those claims are going to be. In other words, you're going to make sure that there's enough money there to make sure that you have enough money to pay for those claims. Then they build in reserves and so on to make sure that there's enough money to fund that promise that is going on. Versus on the ASO funding side, it's the actual claims. So it's actual claims versus anticipated claims. Both have plan operation expenses built in, but the difference is client premiums and client costs. So there's a difference between the two, but really it's anticipated claims versus actual claims, and there's a gap in the middle. That gap can be positive or that gap can be negative. I argue over time, the gap is always negative with the fully insured or traditional funding method versus an ASO method. Again, it's a very simple slide, but I've used it hundreds of times successfully with clients where they understand it. And as I like to say, they get their head nodding because they can see it and they truly understand the difference between the two. So traditional versus ASO plans, or ASO versus traditional insured plans. When we're talking about ASO plans or traditional plans, often it's clients that have a short-term outlook. They've got a short-term outlook. Traditional, they shop the market every once in a while, every couple of years, and they're always looking for the lowest price. That's really the characteristics of a short-term outlook that a client has. A lot of advisors, I'm not saying anybody on this call, but a lot of advisors think that that's what their job is to find the lowest price. So they're sort of telling their client they should have a short-term outlook if they want to achieve that, lowest price on the market. With an ASO plan, with an administration services only plan, it's really a long-term outlook. It's a longer-term outlook for sure. But as I like to say, ASO wins every time over a 5-year period. Without a doubt, it wins just about every time over a 5-year period. Yeah, maybe there's 1 year where a traditional plan in that 5 years may have been better off. The insurance company would have lost in that case, but really over a long period of time, an ASO plan wins every time. So it's really about timing, and it's not magic. People are stereotyping ASO plans. You got to have over 200 employees or 250 employees. You got to have $250,000 in claims. Those are just stereotypes, and those are used to pigeonhole clients into certain size categories and into certain pigeonholes. But it's really not magic. It's about their thinking. Having done this for 30 some odd years, I strongly believe it's about their outlook. If it's a short-term outlook, a traditional funding method works well. If it's a long-term outlook, an ASO funding mechanism wins every time. And the interesting thing is, in putting the slide presentation together and just reviewing it in my notes here, why do you think insurance companies offer traditional funding? Why do they do it? Especially with smaller cases, because you know what? They make a lot of money from it. They say they don't, but they do, in my opinion. They make a lot of money from it. They make an awful lot of money from it. So that's one of the reasons why they do it. So factors that lead the client to ASO, and again, these are in no particular order, without a doubt. Business owners often hate insurance companies. They don't necessarily hate insurance. They may hate insurance companies. Business owners hate paying for increased insurance premiums, without a doubt. Client prospect profitability is one thing and again, that has to do with the short and long-term outlook. The staff composition, we're going to show you an example where that worked to the client's advantage. And they can't get what they, business owners can't get what they want, and they hate being told they must have something that they don't want. So these are, again, factors that lead certainly into an ASO discussion, but again, in no particular order. But it's interesting. I've been in many meetings over the years, like just tons of meetings over the years, and business owners go, "I hate insurance companies," and I go, "Really? Fantastic! That's great. We're having the right discussion then." Business owners hate insurance companies, and profitable business owners, in my opinion, they don't mind spending money on value. Um, Profitable business owners actually like spending money. They like spending money on things, but they want to get value for what it is that they're buying. And I think some of the reasons why they hate insurance companies to a great deal, and especially when we're talking about group benefits, is they go, "What's the value in dental insurance? I don't really understand this. I don't understand the math and the traditional fully insured basis." And I know Anthony Fajer's on the call right now, and Anthony did a great presentation a couple of maybe it was 18 months ago at the CGIB meeting that Dave Patcharish puts on. And he was explaining the math, and he was trying to look at an insurance company's renewal and explaining the math. And he did a great job explaining it. But I think the average client that's got a 10 life case or 10 employees or 20 employees that spends maybe 30 minutes a year thinking about their employee benefit program doesn't have time to understand the math. And we've got years of experience and we understand the math, but he doesn't have time to understand the math, but he understands how much he's paid versus how much he's claimed, and he never thinks he's getting value. So that's why I think a lot of business owners or entrepreneurs don't like insurance companies, especially with respect to this type of an arrangement. They also think that every time they claim personally, because let's make it about them, they never get back as much as they think they should. They go, "I pay all these premiums and I just submitted for these glasses and I only got $200 back, but the glasses were $600 or $800 or $1,000. And geez, I don't really understand this and this doesn't make sense." So it causes a great deal of frustration. So business owners often hate insurance companies. And I'm sure many of you have had a similar experience when talking to clients about insurance companies. Profitable companies. Profitable companies make choices rather than having to face decisions. There's a big difference there. Profitable companies make choices rather than having to face decision. Profitable companies are comfortable with making decisions that are based on long-term future-based decisions. They're looking into the future, they're making investments, they're making decisions based on the future of their company, and that is long-term. Profitable companies value their employees' abilities and their expertise, and profitable companies also invest in their employees. And when you look at companies like that, what are all these things saying? These profitable companies have a long-term outlook. As I like to say, there's two types of prospects in the world. There's profitable prospects and there's other people's prospects. Do you want to deal with companies that are making money, or do you want to deal with companies that aren't making money? It's a pretty simple question, right? But I'd rather deal with people that are making money and making long-term decisions. And I think that's the most important thing that you can take away from this part of the presentation anyway. And it's about asking the right questions. It's about knowing your client. The insurance industry, no matter what end of the insurance industry you are, it's, knowing your client, KYC. You got to know your client. And how do you know who your client is? You got to ask them. Now you got to ask them simple questions. You got to know who they are. You got to know where they're going, know what they're thinking, know what their corporate values are. And these are important. We've got to ask future-based questions to our clients. KYC is vitally important. The internet and AI has all the answers. What it doesn't have are the right questions, right? Those deep questions that you've got to ask your client, because when you ask these questions, these future-based questions, it's going to give you a roadmap of where your client is going and how you can help them get there. And I think that's an important value as well. Assessing risk tolerance. Assessing risk tolerance is an important discussion to have. I think we're going to do a whole session on risk tolerance. I think that's actually going to be our next sessions in May. But risk tolerance, and risk tolerance can mean different things to different people. Are you one of those people that leave early for a flight, or wait to the last possible minute and just arrive just in time? Different risk tolerance levels. It's really interesting. My son Sam he's one of those guys that leaves early for a flight. But his girlfriend, Hazel, lovely girl, I think she's absolutely fantastic. Her attitude is, I don't want to spend any more time in the airport than I absolutely have to. I want to leave just so I can time it perfectly so I walk through the airport and walk on to my flight. But the two of them, when they're traveling together, which is fairly often, it's like oil and water. They don't mix because we got to get there. No, we got lots of time. We got to get there. No. So it's about risk tolerance. Sam's philosophy is I don't want to risk it. I want to have lots of time so we don't have to risk anything. Right. Um, there's another risk tolerance level. What's the deductible on your car insurance? Right. Everybody's got different cars and everybody's got a different deductible on their car insurance. Well, it's interesting. I personally have the maximum deductible on my car, and I've got, I think it's $1,000 because that's what the insurance company will offer. That means I'm responsible for the first $1,000 of damage if I'm in an at-fault accident. But I've got another deductible, and the other deductible's up here. I might write a check if I get in a parking lot dent with, Lawrence Geller, who's on the call right now. I might just write Lawrence a check for $5,000, right? I don't necessarily want to run that through insurance, right? So, it's what is the deductible on your car insurance, both contractually and also mentally, it is based on your risk tolerance level. So how do you mitigate risk with your clients? How do you have that discussion? So risk tolerance, I think, is a really important component when talking about, ASO. Little sidebar here. Macroeconomics, 1983. Macroeconomics 101 was the name of the course, McMaster University. First ever university exam I ever wrote. I'll never forget it. And the first question on that first exam is, what's the purpose of a corporation? And there was a big long page that you could write your answer on. And this is one of the best lessons I ever learned, because the answer of the question was to maximize the value to its shareholders, period. That got you a 10 out of 10. But there was a whole page. And when we were taking up the university or taking up the exam in the class, after all the marks were handed out, the professor got up there and said, this is what the answer is. There's two lessons in this. First of all, this is the right answer. It's to maximize the value to its shareholders. And the second thing is, just because there's a lot of space, it doesn't mean you have to fill it up. But anyways, so when you think about that, what is the purpose of a corporation? The answer is to maximize the value to its shareholders, right? The only way a business can be hurt is financially, not emotionally. It's really financially, because it's all about maximizing the value to its shareholders. So if you can hurt, how can you hurt a company financially? That has to be taken into consideration in the risk tolerance discussion, and that philosophy has to run through that conversation. But all these types of conversations lead to understand what your client's risk tolerance level is. And back to a company can be hurt financially. Well, if you've got a company that's got a lot of profit in it, hurting it financially by a $2,000 or a $5,000 or $10,000 expense, if you would, is not necessarily going to be hurting it. If you've got a company that's on the verge of bankruptcy, yeah, a $10,000 unexpected expense could bankrupt. So, it's all about having that risk tolerance level. And most companies, most prospects, most clients believe that insurance, in the purest sense, is there to protect against catastrophic, sudden, and unexpected events. And I don't think anybody can argue with me on that. No one's ever argued with me on that when I'm talking to clients, because most clients buy a lot of insurance. They buy insurance on their life, they buy insurance on their business, they buy insurance on their properties, they buy insurance on their fleets, they buy insurance on all sorts of things. But again, it's protecting against catastrophic meaning money, sudden and unexpected events. Blake Waddell, who's on the call, who was on our chat TBT session earlier in the month, was talking about one of his clients, and they've got, I think it was $100,000 deductible on their fleet insurance. They are prepared to pay that first $100,000 should one of their trucks or more of their trucks be involved in accidents. They're going to pay that first $100,000. That's not catastrophic to them. It's not sudden or it's not unexpected. They expect these things to happen. So when we're talking about risk tolerance and talking to a client, and when you look at when a client really looks at the promise that they are making to their employees, what would be catastrophic, what would be sudden, and what would be unexpected? Well, if somebody died and you're making them a promise that you're going to pay them $50,000 or you're going to pay their named beneficiary $50,000, would that be catastrophic, sudden, and unexpected? Let's use that filter. And the answer is yes. Or you're going to continue someone's paycheck or a portion of someone's paycheck, the majority of someone's paycheck, for the next 30 years without any output. And they're making, that paycheck that based on that promise is going to be $36,000 a year, and you're going to pay it for 35 years. Yeah, that's going to be catastrophic, sudden, and unexpected. Or you made them a promise that if they get diagnosed with cancer or have a heart attack or diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and you're going to pay them $50,000 or $100,000. Yeah, that would be catastrophic, sudden, and unexpected. Or they have a $500,000 expense because they're sick or injured in a foreign country unexpectedly. Yeah, that would be catastrophic. A large drug claim, a $100,000 drug claim. Yeah, that would be catastrophic. A small drug claim. I'm taking the generic equivalent of Lipitor tonight. Boom. It's pennies. Is that catastrophic, sudden, or unexpected? No. A trip to the dentist. How many of us are going to go to the dentist in the next 12 months? Well, all of us probably, right? It's going to be $300 or $400. My appointment's booked. My next appointment's booked in May, I believe, right? It's not going to be catastrophic. It's not going to be sudden, and it's certainly not unexpected. Or, you slip on the ice today because, it's the snow was, it's April, for goodness sakes, and we shouldn't have the snow or ice, and you need to go to the chiropractor or massage therapist. Is that, unexpected? Yeah, it's unexpected because sometimes we don't get a lot of snow in April, but is it catastrophic? No. Right? Is it sudden? Maybe, but it doesn't meet that filter. So when we talk to clients, it's important that we use English, as I like to say, it's a language that they understand. And I'm saying English as opposed to insuranceese, if you would. But when we use that filter of catastrophic, sudden, unexpected, and you go through a couple of examples like I've just done here, the clients' their heads are nodding and they're understanding what it is that you're speaking of. And we're not talking necessarily about ASO, we're talking about the benefit plan. Because the benefit plan is nothing more than a promise. It's a promise between the employer and the employees. Simple as that. You come and work here at ABC Company Inc. You get paid $125,000 a year. You get a company car. You get 3 weeks vacation. And if you go to the dentist, you get reimbursed 80% of your expenses, up to a certain maximum. That's a promise that you are making, right? So it's important when we're talking to clients about the promise, right? We got to talk to them about that catastrophic, sudden, and unexpected filter that you want to run that promise through. And when we run that promise through that filter, that the client understands and makes sense in their mind, when we run it through that filter, the client's going to say, yeah, we need to buy insurance to protect against those catastrophic, sudden, unexpected events. And we need effective budgeting and effective plan design or promise design, if you would, to make sure that those routine expenses are covered appropriately and budgeted for appropriately. So some of the plan design flexibility that we can bring to the table as a top ASO provider is executive benefit plans. Groups within the groups, you can have a 10-person company and have 3 different plan designs, 3 different promises for the different people within that group. Hybrid plan designs. ASO creates the foundation for the ultimate plan design flexibility. There's no such thing as a packaged product you can put in front of them. You can design, you've got that blank canvas. The client can design exactly what it is that they want and take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of them to create a plan that works for them to help them reach their goals and get so their future is going to be bigger than their past. Executive plans, we can spend days talking about executive plans. We're going to talk on our next sessions in May about, I believe, creative plan design and risk tolerance and so on. So you're going to see some of that in future sessions. But when we're talking about ASO, and because this is ASO Math, it's ASO Math Simplified. One of the key things I think is reporting. It's just regular routine reporting. And effective regular reporting with excellent ongoing conversations results in thin files and profitable long-term relationships. Thin files and profitable long-term relationships. It's transparent, it's easy to keep your finger on the pulse, and you never deliver a bad renewal again. I can't believe, and this is one of my pet peeves, I can't believe we still talk about, oh, I got such a bad renewal, I've got to deliver. There's no such thing as a bad renewal or a good renewal. It's just a renewal. Let's not put emotion into it. We're reading the news. But I'll tell you, it's really easy to read the news if they've had a lot of news along the way. It's not, people understand what's going on. So one of the things that we do for all of our clients at the Benefits Trust is we provide a financial report that goes out every single month to every one of our clients. It also goes out to every advisor. So we've got a number of advisors that we work with that have a number of clients. So they receive an email with a package of these things that say, hey, great, here are your client's financial reports. So you know what's going on. The client knows what's going on. And everybody's, looking at these reports on a monthly basis to the extent that they want to look at them. And the reports are very simple. So we've been using them for quite some time here. Here's our sample company from 2018, for goodness sakes. But in this current month, we use 3 columns: current month, year to date, and previous month, or previous year to date. But in the current month, the client sent us $7,201.21 based on their current population and based on the promise that they are making their employees. $224.83 went for life insurance and AD&D. $984 went for long-term disability, and so on. So they can see how much they are contributing to their health and dental plan and travel assistance and so on. They sent us $7,201. What did we do with that money? Well, we paid out, again, that $224 that they sent us. We paid it out to various insurance companies for the life and AD&D. The long-term disability, we sent that to another insurance carrier. For the stop loss, we sent that to another insurance carrier, and so on. So we paid out of that $702, we paid out $1,400 in insurance premium to protect against catastrophic, sudden, unexpected events in the promise that they are making their employees. Great. Then we paid out $4,109.32 in transactional claims. There was a $180 hospital claim, a $100 vision care claim. There was $2,300 on drugs through the drug card. There was $625 in paramedicals. There was other medical services totaling $560. And in this case, there was $4,109 that were used to reimburse their employees. We're not circumventing any of the privacy legislation. We're not saying that Joe Smith or Mary Jones, use this drug for this reason. We're just saying this is what your total claims were for this period. Then we say, great, there was $869.81 in plan operation expenses, which include your commissions. So when we take the amount that they sent us and we show them the amount that we've paid to the insurance companies, the amount we've claimed, plus the plan operation costs, great, there's an $819.60 surplus in their account for that particular month. Year-to-date cumulative, there's a $9,000 surplus in their account, and previous year-to-date, there was a $4,000 deficit in their account. They know exactly how they stand financially every single month. It's as simple as that. It's straightforward. It works and works every time. It just explains what is going on with the particular account, their particular account. The result is your client and prospect now know now has the freedom to promise what makes the most sense for them. They see these reports that happen on a monthly basis. They can look at them through a number of different lenses, but they know exactly what is going on with their particular account. So you're never delivering a bad renewal or a good renewal. You're just delivering a renewal. And as I like to say, those really super thin files, it's interesting because we've had renewal meetings and we've had numerous examples of these renewal meetings from advisors. And I think Lindsay has a new client. And Lindsay, maybe you could jump in here for a second and just talk about that new advisor that you're working with that just delivered their first renewal. Could you do that?
Absolutely, Rob. So it was an existing advisor of mine, but a new case to us. It was over or just close to 500 lives. Was with a traditional carrier prior to coming over to us. Came over. The renewal was May 1. We delivered it, and the renewal took the advisor 30 seconds. It was super quick, easy to handle, and it was just done. And he couldn't believe just how easy it was to negotiate an ASO renewal. So,
because thank you very much, Lindsay, and I appreciate you. By the way, we did not rehearse this. I put Lindsay on the spot there, but it's fascinating because this client goes, "Hey, great! In this case, it was a large. I didn't realize it was such a large case, but it's a 500 life case." It took 30 seconds to do the renewal because they've had these reports along the way. The client knew exactly where they stood financially. Um, so it was interesting, but the client and now knows they have the freedom to promise whatever it is that makes sense for them. In this case, they didn't want to talk about their promise because it made sense for them and it was right on budget. They realized that they can protect the promise and budget for the promise, knowing they have, never underpaid or overpaid, right? It's just an adjustment at a point in time. And they can understand that this is easy to form a long-term relationship. It's less marketing of the plan. It's more stability for the client. It's a thin file, and it's more profitable for you, the advisor. And when you think about it, does Canadian Tire change their benefit plan every 3 years? Do they shop for a new provider every 3 years? Does Air Canada do that? Does RBC do that? No, they don't do that. So why does a 10 life case or a 20 life case do that? Because we tell them that they should do that because we can find you a cheaper price. Not all clients, especially profitable clients, are looking for a cheaper price. They're looking for value. They're looking for value. So let's look at benefits through that perspective. Have a real conversation about risk tolerance with your clients and prospects. Have a real conversation about what we've just talked about here. And it's interesting. I think you'll be surprised at the outcome. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at the outcome. So, ASO Math Simplified. Now we've got time to talk about the case studies. First case study, and we're going to go through this in detail, but the first case study is a 32 life case. They've got life, accidental death, and dismemberment, dependent term life insurance. They've got long-term disability, stop loss, out-of-country emergency coverage, and they've got an EAP program. They also have medical, dental, and they've got a healthcare spending account for a few of their top people. And the client is frustrated with the renewal each year. What's the hurt? Question that I always love to ask, and a lot of advisors love to ask, what's the hurt? Why are we here? What's the hurt? And I'm just frustrated with the renewal every single year. It seems to go up. I don't understand the math. I don't have time to understand the math. It's all very confusing, incurred but not reported. What does that mean? And, all these things. So we came in and we took a look at this case based on what the advisor sent to us. We looked at this case and we said, okay, fantastic. There's $885,000 in life insurance volume. The accidental death and dismemberment is the same thing. There are 21 family members in this particular case that all need the dependent term life. Everybody, oh, sorry, there is no long-term disability. I thought there was, but there is no long-term disability in this case for whatever reason. We put a $10,000 stop loss or large amount pooling in place. And we also put the out-of-country and travel assist in place because they want those benefits to be in place for their single and family folks. Great. Now and then we've got the EA or Akira in here as well. That's the EAP actually. But what's interesting is we put the insurance where the insurance ought to go in catastrophic event insurance. Because again, we're getting the client to think about, we're using this insurance to protect against those catastrophic, sudden, unexpected events. It's not embedded into the health rate. It's not embedded into a dental rate by any stretch. It's just insurance. So they're buying insurance. So the cost of insurance, as you can see, versus the current plan, because the current plan has a lot of these insurances embedded into their rates. The cost of insurance is going up from $478.14 a month to $1,600 a month, or a difference of $1,100 a month. So the client goes, wow, this is a lot more expensive. And I said, no, it's not more expensive. It's just where we're putting insurance where insurance ought to be. So you're getting the head nod. Okay, thinking a little differently. Then we propose our rates for the health and dental component of it. We use budgeted rates, and we're going to come back to those in a moment. But our budgeted rates are coming out significantly less. First of all, they're going to be less because of the removal of the out-of-country coverage, the removal of the large amount pooling, but they're also less in the budget, and we'll show you why in a few moments. But that they come out significantly less, almost just about half of what, or just less than half of, or more than half of what they're paying right now. On the health side and on the dental side, there's quite a bit of a difference as well. We've also got 3 people on the healthcare spending account and an administration charge on the healthcare spending account. So all of a sudden, our rates are significantly less. Our proposed rates are significantly less. And then when we put this through the wash, the total self-funded budget that they're currently, or the total budget that they're paying right now is $11,000. The total self-funding budget we're paying right now, we're suggesting that they pay is $8,700, a difference of about $3,000 a month, or $1,800 when you add in the increased insurance or where the insurance ought to be. So we're saying actually it's about $23,000 a year less, $1,900 a month less, or 14.9%, or $738 per employee. So this got the client's attention, without a doubt. So I've gone through those numbers pretty quick, but this is how we come up with them. More importantly, they're just going, okay, well, great. How come your health and dental rates are so much less? Why are you suggesting that the budget be so much less? Well, it's simple. We look at the claims that the company has paid in 2023 and 2024 for extended health care. Important to note, there are 11 single people and 21 family people that make up the 32 employees. And the last 12-month period that we had shared with us, the client or the insurance company paid $28,856 in health claims. Okay, that's what they paid. Then we're going to use a 7.5% inflation and trend utilization factor. So we're going to say, hey, everything is going to cost 7.5% more. The cost of these drugs, the cost of the chiropractic care, the vision care, whatever it is that's included in that healthcare promise is going to be 7.5% more. Do you agree with that, Mr. Prospect? Do you agree with that, Mr. Advisor, Mrs. Advisor, whatever? Do you agree with that? That's the number we're using. And everybody goes, okay, makes sense. We can make it higher, we can make it lower, it doesn't matter. So great. So the projected claims for the next 12-month period are going to be $31,020.20. We're multiplying that 28,856 number by that 7.5. So we're saying your claims for the same promise next year based on the same population are going to be $31,000. And in this case, we're going to add in our administration and service fees as 16%. So that's another $5,000, almost $6,000 for a total of $36,928.81. Great. And we say at this point that 16% includes the commissions for the advisor and includes our fees to run your benefit promise, to keep the promise that you're making to your employees. And they go, great, we get that. So now we want to use budgeted rates because it's important to use these budgeted rates because your population is going to change throughout the year. So we need $36,000 based on your current population of 11 and 21. So that we divide that by 12 and we need $3,077.40 a month. Great. But how do we come up with the budgeted rates? Well, it's easy. It's just a mathematical exercise. We take 21 family members and we multiply it by a family factor of 2.7. There are exactly 2.7 people in every family. You know, it's interesting. My family used to be 5. Now it's down to 2, right? Because all my kids are growing and off the benefit plan. They're not off the payroll, but off the benefit plan. So we're using a family factor of 2.7. It's worked for us for years. Insurance companies use those factors as well. We use 2.7. So if we multiply 21 people by the 2.7, we come up with 56.7 people. And then we add in the family employees. We come up with 67.7 people are going to be covered under this benefit plan. So then we take 67.7 people and we divide it by the $3,077.40 a month that we need to collect. That works out to $45.46. So we need to collect $45.46 from every single person covered under the plan every single month. But in order to come up with a family rate, we multiply that by 2.7. So we're just taking it, dividing it by 2.7, adding the single people, and then taking that $45 and multiplying it by the 2.7 again to come up with the $122.73. So we come up with these single rate per month of $45.46, family rate of $122. Simple math. Okay, I get that. Easy, makes sense. And again, it's making sense in the client size. We're going through the same mathematical exercises using a slightly different inflation and trend factor for dental care. Claims, add in the dental care, come up with that amount, add in the administration fee. We're saying it's $35,000 a year we need to collect, divided by 12 is $2,900. Going through the same mathematical exercise using the same factor of 2.7, and we come up with these family rates. As simple as that. Then what we do is we put, hold on a second, pardon me. Then we put those into the budget right here, as you can see, and it comes up with the 14.9% less. So we're doing that, and we're saying to the client, hey, great, does that make sense? We're taking your historical claims, we're using these factors, we're coming up with what we think is a reasonable budget for you based on your historical claims, 14.9% less. Great. So the advisor wanted a flat 6% commission. It was a 14.9% reduction to their renewal based on the conservative estimate that we came up with. We also discussed with the client that we want to add 100% unlimited class for the owner, and the client decided to move forward, and the advisor got a new client. Pretty straightforward. Let's show you a different example. The results are certainly not the same. Life, AD&D, DEP life, long-term disability, stop loss, out of country, EAP, 69 life case, medical and dental. The advisor wanted to introduce ASO before somebody else did. On this particular renewal, for whatever reason, he decided that it was appropriate to introduce ASO. Again, very simple, straightforward. The life rate is going to be the same. The AD&D is going to be the same. The long-term disability rate is going to be the same. Etc. We are going to add in the stop loss. We are going to add in the out of country where insurance ought to be. This EAP program, fine, great. Number of employees, 69. Great. The insurance costs are significantly higher, as we discussed, because we're putting insurance where insurance ought to be. Great. Then the health rates are going to be a little bit less because we're taking the insurance out of those rates, but the health rates are still a bit less, but not much. Interesting. And the dental rates are actually pretty close. So when we put this into the budget, wow, this plan has been underwritten well. The advisor has done a really good job in negotiating with the insurance company, and our budgeted rates are the same as what the insurance company is offering on a fully insured approach. Identical, 0.1%, nothing. It's a rounding number, $336 or $28 a month in costs difference. Well, $28 is what you spend on Starbucks, for goodness sakes, right? And again, how we came up with those rates, again, the exact same math. In this case, we're using a 5% trend for whatever reason the underwriters felt that was important. We're adding a 20% in administration fee because the advisor wants a flat 10% commission, right? And go through using the same 2.7% factor, which we use all the time. We can go through the math step by step if you like, but it's straightforward. Again, it's dividing that $111,000 number by 12, dividing it by 12 to get a monthly amount, multiplying it by the number of single and family people, and dividing it so on to come up with our rates, right? Well, it's interesting. Again, the rates are almost identical, but the advisor introduced this concept to the client. The owner loved the idea of the monthly reporting. Absolutely loved the idea of the monthly reporting. The owner also loved the idea of the 100% unlimited plan. The owner goes, so there's no real difference in the cost, but I can see it every single month. And also, I love the unlimited plan. And the owner really, what the hurt was, is he wanted to get off the treadmill. He was never really 100% sure if he was paying the right amount or not. He wanted to get off the treadmill. And the advisor kept the client. The client says, yeah, I know it doesn't make, it's not the financial sense. We've got a profitable company. We're looking long-term, and this makes more sense to me. Plus, I want that 100% unlimited plan for myself. Great. So the client moved over to us at the Benefits Trust, and it's been working famously ever since. Case study number 3. This one is a little bit different. We're going to show you a case study. We're going to show you some renewals. This is a case of ours. An advisor brought in a Virgin Group. The client wanted life, AD&D, medical, and dental benefits for their company, but they wanted an option of pooled plus a healthcare spending account because the client has heard a lot about the healthcare spending accounts, but he also wanted more of a traditional plan design for his particular group. So in this particular case, there are 33 lives, fast growing company. There are 33 lives in this particular organization. And we got the insurance quoted at 30 cents, the life, the AD&D, and we can all see what these rates are. So great. So the cost of the pooled benefits in this case was $1,850.35 a month. Fantastic. This was April 2022, a couple of years ago. Then what we did is we proposed an alternative one. They wanted a $2,500 single healthcare spending account and a $3,500 family healthcare spending account, compared to what we thought would be the appropriate starting rates for a more traditional type of promise for health and dental. Okay. And as we can see, the alternative for the budget for a healthcare spending account was significantly more than the budget for a traditional looking health and dental promise. And the administration fee on this case was 15%, right? So we're going, all right, well, let's just show the two. This one is known, this one is unknown. Their claims might be higher, their claims might be lower. But again, the advisors did an excellent job in explaining what the differences were between these two. The client liked the idea, but the client decided to go with the 28% less option, in this case, the budgeting for the defined benefit as opposed to the defined contribution amount. So they set the rates based on this budget. These rates were an estimate of what we thought the claims would be based on a new group. But one thing that's important to know is when we analyze these things, look at this, 29 single employees and 4 family employees. This is a young group. It's a very young group. A lot of them are single, right? So we estimated the claims to be significantly less than what we thought. So we budgeted for $32,000 in health claims for that year. So again, we're not inflating them because this is what we estimated them to be. So, and in this particular case, the client or the advisor wanted on a traditional plan design, the employer or the client advisor, oh my God, the advisor wanted that 20% because he wanted a 10% commission. So great, $32,000. We're going to estimate that 20% administration fee to be $8,000, right? $40,000, $333 a month. We use the same factors that we used before, 2.7, and we come up with these budgeted rates. The client is looking at these things going, great, reasonable, we get it, that makes sense, understand. The same on the dental, that's how we're going to come up with it, fabulous. We're going to go ahead with that traditional looking benefit plan. So anyways, the client decided to go with that, proceed with option 2. Again, the traditional plan design, the life and AD&D with extended health and dental. The client liked the defined coverage for the employees. Great, simple, straightforward. Now let's go to the first renewal. Awesome. So everything worked out fine. The company, everything, was worked out fine. The company was happy with the benefit plan. It was well communicated to the employees, and they used the plan. So all of a sudden, the first renewal, well, great. We negotiated a 2-year rate guarantee with the insurance companies for the life and AD&D, so nothing was changing on those pooled rates. But what we found is the actual rates for the health and dental went down considerably because of their utilization, to the tune of we reduced their cost by 30%, right? How the heck did we do that? What happened? Well, they didn't use the plan as much as we thought. We had budgeted for them to use the plan quite a bit. They paid us $41,000 in contributions for their health. Our population increased throughout the year a bit, but they paid us $41,587 for their health claims. They only claimed $13,000 in health claims. We budgeted $26,000. We only paid out $5,100 in dental claims. When we add the two together, they paid us, close to $70,000, and we paid out $18,000. They had a huge surplus in their account. Huge surplus in their account, right? So we reduced their contributions. Then comes along April 2024, right? A couple, some interesting things happened. Well, the life rates remained the same. Everything remained the same. Their out-of-country travel rates went up slightly because it's a pooled risk. but nothing significant. Again, this is the second renewal. The second renewal. Well, we're reducing their rates again. What is going on here? These guys are not using the plan. As you can see, over 2 years, we reduced the contributions significantly. It went from 41,000 to 29,000. Claims went from 13 to 18 for a 62% loss ratio. Again, getting a little bit closer. Same thing on the dental. We're getting closer. We reduced their contributions considerably. Claims went from 5,000 to 13,000, 60% loss ratio, etc. So again, we reduced their contributions. We're trying to get to that right balance. They had a surplus in their account. They were taking contribution holidays, which was great. So then we go on to the third renewal. We just delivered, or the advisor just delivered this particular renewal, right? And again, oh, pardon me, we go back, no change in the life rate. We changed the stop loss rates. The risk is increased for stop loss because of new drugs on the marketplace. Travel insurance, again, has got up slightly, but nothing significant, nothing that the client, needed to write home about, so to speak, right? It was $45 a month. Great. Now, the rates changed slightly. They went down 7.1%, right? Because they're starting to use their plan a little bit more. They're getting a little bit older. They're understanding it better, whatever the circumstances are. But they paid us $17,000 in contributions. Again, you can see how it's declined over the 3-year period. Claims have leveled off in this case, but a loss ratio of 100.3% and a loss ratio of 48.84% on the dental. But you can see how it's kind of gone up and then down, right? Overall, again, a pretty significant, when we look at the 3 years together, it's a pretty significant 50% loss ratio. But again, we're looking at those and taking those things into consideration, taking their funding surplus into consideration and so on. So the result of it is the client is really happy because they're paying the right amount of money. They're not paying too much. They're not paying too little. They own the surplus in this particular example. They own the surplus. The client is very happy with the advisor's recommendation to choose the ASO plan because they're also looking at a rate guarantee, and it's not always a good thing. They were looking at a 2-year rate guarantee at the time from an insurance company with a minimum of or maximum of 15% increase after the second renewal. So if this was true in this particular case, they would be paying the same amount for that 2-year period. I don't think the insurance, well, I can't say that, but I don't think the insurance company would have reduced it after year 1 because they had that rate guarantee in place. No matter what the experience is, I don't believe that they would have reduced it. Fine. So they're paying the same amount. There's a fear that clients have. And again, it's back to my comments about paying for value. If successful people don't mind buying things of value, right, when they can see the value. They have a fear of paying too much or a fear of paying too little. You want to be able to eliminate that fear by paying the right amount. In this particular case, this client wanted to pay the right amount. The traditional plan would have been overfunding the traditional arrangements. They would have been overfunded, and the client would have left a lot of money on the table. So they were really happy with this ASO solution that they brought to the table. So these are some examples that we've gone through. We've gone through them fairly quick. Again, Mike is going to send you the slide deck that we've reviewed these with, that I've reviewed today, pardon me. And I want you to take some time to go through them if you like, right? And if you've got some questions, we'd be certainly happy to answer those questions. But I think in summary, when we've got 5 minutes left, I think it's important that we ask our clients and prospects the right questions. I think it's our role as advisors to educate them. And that very first slide of the gap, it's just a great slide that I've used hundreds of times to educate people, to start the conversation. It's about educating the client so they understand what it is that they're buying. They understand that they are buying, either, anticipated claims or actual claims. It's as simple as that. They're buying insurance to protect against catastrophic, sudden, unexpected events. And are they buying anticipated claims or are they buying actual claims for transactional items? If the client has a long-term outlook, paying for their actual claims makes a great deal of sense. We'll do a calculation for you very simply and very quickly. Right? We can do that calculation for you right away. We would be happy to do it on an apples to apples comparison. Um, and it just makes nothing but sense, right? You will see it, you will be able to feel it, you'll be able to taste it, right? We'll do the calculation for you quickly on an apples to apples comparison, just like in those first two examples. Sometimes it makes a great deal of sense, sometimes it doesn't, but that's for you and your client to decide. But to have a look, it doesn't take any time, and we'd be happy to do it for you. But the other thing is, if you don't, somebody else will, or somebody else might. And that's, where problems lie. In that first example that I used, the advisor, the outgoing advisor, the advisor that got fired was saying, "You're too small for ASO. You're too small. Don't even look at it." Well, he wanted to look at it. The client wanted to look at it. He got someone that would do it and proceeded to move forward because it made sense. The client wanted to pay for that value in this particular example. It made sense. In the future, and next month, the dates haven't been confirmed yet, but they're going to be out later on this week for sure. So visit us at thebenefitstrust.com. But the topic is going to be mitigating risk through creative plan design. So we're going to talk about a number of different plan designs and how we can mitigate risk in a promise to eliminate future claim fluctuations or large claim fluctuations. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Now we've got some time for questions, discussions, and ideas. And let me stop sharing right now so I can see everybody. But there's only a couple minutes left. So if you need to take off, we greatly appreciate it. And on behalf of all of us at the Benefits Trust, we want to thank you for your time. We're going to send you a CE credit along with the slide deck. And we're also going to send you a survey. Fill out the survey, send it back to us so we can tell us how we did today and how we can do it better tomorrow and what subjects you'd like to see in future Zoomcasts like this. Check out our website, check out Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, all those wonderful things. Now, if you got to take off, we understand. We're going to send that to you. But who has got some questions that haven't been answered in the chat box already? Thoughts, ideas, feedback?
Rob, there's a question in the chat that says, if the admin fee is 15%, why is the health admin fee 16%? Where's the additional 1% coming from?
Was that on the healthcare spending account? I'd have to look at the example again. I think it was on that very first one. Yes, it was on that. Hold on a second. It was on that first.
It was on the health slide. We can get back to it's from Rod Johnson. We can get back to him after the session.
Yeah, there's one of two things that happen. Sometimes advisors say, "I want a 16% commission or 6% commission overall, but on a healthcare spending account, I only want a 5% for whatever reason." Right? That's probably what it was. And I apologize, I was going too quick.
No worries. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions, thoughts, ideas?
Great
Anthony.
job, Rob. I was going to say what I always I think Dave had the best comment. I don't know if you've ever used this, and insurance companies are like casinos. They always win. So, but when you win and, there's been terrible claims, all of a sudden you feel great. I mean, I just did a renewal. They've had reductions, and the owner has stage 4 cancer and $67,000 in pool claims this year. Yes, I know there's a stop loss involved, but all of a sudden I'm going to go in and say, look how wonderful. I mean, last year it was a 20% reduction. So look, I fully embrace it, but my biggest worry is clients understanding. And I know I talk to them every time because I don't want to be caught like that one consultant, but you also have to be careful of the people who are selling ASO, that their clients fully understand what they're buying. And there's absolutely nothing wrong. It just, you have to have a good feel for, and remember who you're talking to. Are you talking to the owner, CFO, or are you talking to some HR person?
Oh, no, very much so. Now, you brought up a couple of interesting points. First of all, the guy's got $67,000 in claims. The answer would be $10,000 because presumably there's a large amount of pooling built into that case. So it's a $10,000 problem. And is it going to be ongoing or not? Right. So But you know, the other point is who you're talking to is I think the most critical thing. You've got to be talking to somebody, and that's why, you know, dealing with smaller organizations, they truly understand the risks if you're talking to the right person. And when you're talking to an HR person, it's really interesting because one of the things that I found is you got to talk out of both sides of your mouth, because what you're selling to the client, to the owner of the company, you're selling opportunity, and what you're selling to the HR person is security, right?
But can I butt in here?
Yeah, of course, Jay. I love.
Say
So
no, Rob. Rob, say no. Say no, Rob.
no, it's too late. He opened the gauntlet. No, you know what? Like you're talking about risk versus risk, and the reality is when you go traditional insurance, your ASO reset on an annual basis plus a risk fee. When you go ASO, you're reset on a monthly basis with no risk fee. The risk to the client financially is the same. It just moves the frequency.
Is it time?
And
Yeah.
so, you know, like the CFO or the owner of the business need to understand that they could have a big change this month, but it's going to happen this month or it's going to happen on renewal.
Yeah.
One way or the other, it's coming.
So yeah, exactly. And Jay, it's a matter of timing, as I like to say, right? But one of the things that we do using a budgeted ASO approach is we do not change it on a monthly basis per se. We just report on it on a monthly basis.
Mhm.
So the individual rates don't change. So if in a case where most people go to the dentist in August because they've got time and they take the kids before they go back to school, and everybody goes to the dentist in August. It's the dentist's busiest month. And we know they're not going in September, October, November. So when there's a surplus, I went through that financial statement. When there's a surplus in their account, we go, fantastic. We're not sending you the money back. We're just letting it ride for future claims fluctuations. When there's a deficit, we're not asking them to shore up the account, right? We're there into the bank of the benefits trust for that deficit for that short period of time. We do not charge or credit interest on surpluses or deficits. But the idea is, hey, we know if they've gone to the dentist, they're not going to go next month, so it's going to even out. So at the end of the year, it's because we're using a budgeted approach, we allow clients to have surpluses and deficits to smooth those fluctuations. But it really is a difference in timing. In Anthony's case, yeah, he had a reduction last year in that traditional fully insured type of an arrangement, but they're going to have a pretty significant increase this year. And then it's Anthony's job to argue with the insurance company that potentially, if this guy's got stage 4 cancer, it's not going to necessarily be a repeatable ongoing claim.
But it's the same job one way or the other, whether it's ASO or traditionally insured.
Yep. But it's just a matter of timing. But again, it's really what the client's outlook is and what they want to buy.
You know, the only risk, I'm going to use that word in air parentheses, the only additional risk is that when you're insured and you cancel the program, you don't have to worry about the cost of remaining claims. With ASO, you do, but you know, with electronic claims these days, that risk is so incredibly low.
I agree. Anthony, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, check my rants today. I have this more about insurers not wanting to share information on the high claimants. It just, especially right at renewal time. You know, I have one who has an MS claimant. She says, "Oh, our MS claimant's turning 65." So I go to the insurer. They say, "Oh, we can't tell you whether that's him. It's 100 lives." They can't tell me that claim should not be recurring. It's going to now be a government issue. Yeah. I mean, come on.
But it's yeah. You know, it's back to when it works to their advantage, they can't tell you. When it works to their disadvantage, they can't tell you, right? You know, it's like, do you have a benefit plan? Great. It wouldn't be a waste of our time to meet. Do you have a benefit plan? No. Great. It wouldn't be a waste of our time to meet, right? Derek Gleed in the house.
Mr. Crowder, thank you very much. Great presentation as usual. Fast question. On the last sample that you provided, how often on a new case like that where there's no historical data and we're creating rates based on industry or whatever factors we're using, and you get into a large surplus position or potentially even a deficit position, how often and what kind of education are you seeing provided to the customer regarding potential midterm price adjustments and this kind of thing to work with that plan over the course of a year or a course of 2 or 3 years um, in the market with again with new cases?
Yeah. Virgin cases, it's easy. We use quite frankly, a really good educated guess, right? On where we think the rates ought to be. And we use an educated guess on we look at very similar organizations in our block of business. We often have quotes from various insurance companies as well on what we think their educated guesses are, because their educated guesses might be, are very conservative in nature, generally speaking, but also they've got materially larger blocks than we do. So we use a number, and then we look at the factors that, in this particular example, is a younger group, predominantly single. So we take all of those things into consideration, and then we inform the client and educate the client on what the process is. We've taken a really good educated guess, taking into account these things. We're going to provide you these monthly reports. Let's monitor this together over the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, etc. And in this particular example, I don't know how active the advisor was, but I suspect the advisor was fairly active and reviewed that case probably in the first 3 months, and the client said, great, let it ride. The second 3 months and said, probably great, let it ride. And then after the 12 months, then we had a significant reduction. They could have taken a reduction if they wanted throughout the year, but I'm pretty sure it was just let it ride until the end of the year because they had budgeted for it and it was fine. So I think it's important for the advisor. I think, Derek, is an answer to a bigger question. I think it's important to an advisor to be looking at these reports and communicating with their clients saying, hey, everything is good. Everything's running on budget. Everything is, this month for this reason, this happened, or this month for that reason, that happened. But I think it just creates an opportunity for you to be in touch with the client on a regular basis, period. Even if there's no news. No news is no news. And that's a great discussion to have with your client. I think you'll see in one of my historical TikTok videos or Instagram videos, we lost a case earlier this year because the advisor never spoke to the client. The advisor never talked to the client in over 2 years. Simple as that. We had an example of an advisor that never didn't speak to the client in over 6 years, and the client called up our office and was asking for some plan design changes. And we said, what does your advisor say? They said, who's our advisor? And we told them, and they go, I've been here and I've never met that guy. Spoke to the advisor, and the advisor said, I never send out renewals, not with you, not with anybody. I never send out renewals. I told the clients that that prices are going to change either up or down every single year, right? And if you have a problem with the change, give me a call. The client never squawked, never said a word, so I never called him. Never spoke to him again. Now, right or wrong, that was what this particular guy's business model is. We're going to give you the tools. My point is, and this is, again, Derek, thank you for the question. We're going to give you the tools to give you something to talk about. Simple as that. We're going to give you the tools to give you something to talk about. But, it's interesting because, when you've got a good advisor, even no news is good news. I don't know how many people have heard from their financial advisor. If you've got an external financial advisor, I do, since all this noise has been going on with, the markets. I've heard from my financial advisor. Yeah, it's been a blanket email, but I've heard from them. Do I feel good about it? Yeah, because I've heard from them. I didn't read the email. I know it's not going to be great news, right? But it is what it is.
So Rob, just for a quick second, if you can go back to the original question about reporting to your client, doesn't matter if you're ASO on a Virgin case or if you've gone fully insured, unless you've put them in a complete pool, you should be checking in with your client first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and you can still, even with a small 3 life case with any insurer, you can still find out claims versus premium.
Yep.
and you can still have a great conversation. And with you guys, whether it's, a 6-month adjustment or 1 year adjustment, well, with the group, you should be prepping them, for that annual, here's where it looks like your claims are going
Yeah.
conversation. It's the exact same process, one way or the other.
Jay, I asked the question specifically because Rob brought up the situation or the scenario of a 12-month or 24-month rate guarantee on a traditional style plan. And in a case like that, the advisor would probably not be checking in with the client. I mean, let's be honest, they probably wouldn't be checking in with the client on a regular
That's a
basis.
really lazy advisor.
Well, yeah, I mean, they call it what you want, but they wouldn't necessarily be touching base. And at the end of the day, the fact that this is a transparent plan where the client can see where their money is on a plan that has been pre-priced on a packaged basis, on a rate guarantee that was sold to them on the basis of, look, you're going to have rate stability for 2 years. Aren't we great? That particular advisor is going to have a very difficult conversation at the end of the 2 years
Oh, yeah.
when the loss ratio is about 35% and they don't have that surplus money in their genes. So
Oh, yeah.
I asked it for a reason
Uh,
because I know how flexible Benefits Trust is in terms of adjusting premiums or working with the client, doing pretty much anything you could possibly imagine doing to work with that case. And I've had a number of virgin cases over the years where we don't know what the rate's going to be when we go in, but we sure work on it throughout. And Benefits Trust, and Rob, this is to you, credit to you and your team, been phenomenal that way. And it's the greatest way of combating that 2 year rate guarantee of a traditional carrier.
You're always going to pay the right amount. And you're right, Jay. Yeah. You're speaking to your clients on a regular basis. That's probably why, your persistency rate is significantly higher than a lot, right? And I applaud you for that. And I know nobody on this call is certainly or everybody on this call is certainly talking to their clients on a regular basis versus the people that aren't on this call because they're too busy doing their own thing, right? As opposed to
Yeah.
learning.
But I think it goes right back to one of your original statements where you said, ask them the simple questions. When I speak at conferences, when I lead some of the NGBMs, I've asked people, how many people ask any questions? And most advisors ask 0 questions. So it all goes right back to that, figure out your client's appetite for risk and then determine it. And then to your original point about, over a 5-year period, you're always going to beat the traditional insured pricing anyways.
Yeah.
So, do you have the risk? Okay, we're going to guess at a price for you. Insurers are going to guess at the first year price anyways. And it's going to go up or it's going to go down, but we're going to be 20-30% lower on fees every single year. So the math long term is always going to work.
Jay, I couldn't help but think I was riding chairlift this year, like I did a lot, but
as one does.
As one does, I was running the chairlift and I was speaking to the chairman of WestJet, right? And I did a video on it, right? So you can check it out on Instagram.
I've seen the video, yeah.
On this video, but I was telling someone, we were out for dinner or something, and they said, anything interesting happened this week? A simple question. I said, I rode the chairlift with the chairman of WestJet, right? And he told this great story, and I went on to tell the story, and anyways, he goes, "How did you know he was the chairman of WestJet?" And then I go, I asked him questions. I didn't ask him, what do you do? I asked him questions. I said, hey, the first question I asked him is because at Whistler, just about everybody is from somewhere else. No one, was born. So, hey, where are you from? And the guy says, well, I live in Victoria, but I also live in Calgary and, wherever. Right. And, oh, well, geez. He goes, yeah, I work in Calgary 3 days a week and I work out of my home in Victoria the other days. And I'm up here for a week because I have a chalet here as well. Right. And I said, oh, well, that's great. And then we started, a conversation about, back and forth and what kind of work you do in Calgary and aviation industry. And I said, oh my gosh, you must work for WestJet. And he goes, yeah, I'm actually the chairman or something. Right. So it was through a series of questions where I found this out. I didn't ask him as soon as he got on the chairlift, what is it that, what's your job title? and who do you work for, right? But it's through questions where you get information, and sometimes the information you can get is extraordinarily valuable, but it's having the right questions. Like I'm convinced that the internet has all the answers, it just doesn't have the questions, right? And I don't know, we don't have time for it today, but I can get you to say any card in a deck of card that I want you to say, but by asking you a question, right? I can just go through a process of elimination to get you to say the ace of spades, and I'll show you the ace of spades, right? Perfect. So it's about questions, and it's about long-term outlook, and it's about timing, and it's about communicating effectively with your client on an ongoing basis. Time well spent today. Thank you all very much. On behalf of all of us at the Benefits Trust, again, a big shout out. Mike is going to send out some things for everybody to enjoy, including a CE credit, as well as signed up for our newsletter and so on. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. We'd love to help you out. If we're doing business together, thank you for your continued business. If we're not doing business together, we'd love to show you what we can do. Again, it's an easy way to compare. Have a great day and wish you continued good selling.